Hey guys, before we start, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment if you have any feedback. Let's go to the story. I always knew my family didn't understand me. I just never realized how deep it went until that day. That day I overheard them mocking my entire life. I grew up in a small Midwestern town, the kind where success meant owning a truck and working a blue-collar job. My dad, Tom, had been in construction his whole life. Hard work, bad back, a six-pack of beer by 6 p.m. My mom, Sandra, worked part-time as a receptionist. Spends most of her free time gossiping with the neighbors and watching soap operas. And my sister, Amy? She was the kind of person who always had a new passion, but never stuck to anything. One month it was photography, then massage therapy. Then there was some MLM scam she swore was going to make her rich. She was 28 now and still mooching off my parents, blaming the world for her failures. I was the odd one out, the middle kid, the one they barely noticed until they needed something. I had always been into computers, long before it was cool. While other kids played football, I was teaching myself how to code. Built my first app at 19. Landed a six-figure remote tech job by 22. While my dad was breaking his back at construction sites, I was making more in a month than he did in a year. And he hated that. He never saw my job as real work. Pressing buttons all day? That's not a job. That's a scam. Meanwhile, he had no problem spending the money I made. For 9 years, I had been the family ATM, paying their mortgage, covering medical bills, funding Amy's endless attempts at finding herself. And every time I tried to stop, they'd guilt-trip me. Family helps family. You're the only successful one. Of course, you should help. So I kept doing it. Until the day I finally woke up. It was a Tuesday. I had been working since 4 a.m., finishing a major update for a client. When everything went smoothly, I decided to take the rest of the day off. On a whim, I thought, why not surprise my parents with lunch? Hadn't seen them in a while. Figured it'd be nice. I was so wrong. I picked up their favorite takeout, drove over and parked a few houses down. It's an old habit from when I was a teenager sneaking in past curfew. As I walked up the driveway, I heard laughter. Through the open window, my dad's voice carried loud and clear. The dumbass thinks he's so important with his little programming job. I froze. Sitting on his ass all day pressing buttons while real men work, he scoffed. My mom laughed. Not defended me. Not tell him to stop. Laughed. At least his button pressing pays our bills, she joked. More laughter. A new voice joined in Amy's. Remember when he tried explaining his job at Thanksgiving? She giggled. Like we actually care about his nerd crap? Just tell us how much more money you're sending, Code Monkey. More laughter. Like my entire career, my entire life was one big joke to them. My dad continued. He didn't get my looks or charm, so I guess he had to be good at something. Amy wheezed, practically crying. Oh my God. Remember when Uncle Bill thought he worked at Geek Squad? And Jake got all serious like, no, I'm a senior software architect. She imitated me with a mock-serious face. They roared with laughter. Then my mom, her voice dripping with fake concern. I do worry about him, though. Alone all day with his computers. No girlfriend. No real friends. Amy snorted. He's probably one of those weird tech guys who can't talk to women. My dad nodded sagely. Like the 28-year-old dropout living off my money was suddenly an expert on relationships. Boy needs to toughen up. Get some real-world experience. The final straw? My mom said, smirking. We should probably lay him off until after he pays for Amy's new car. I stood there, stomach twisting, heart pounding. 9 years of funding their lives. And this is how they saw me. Not as a son. Not as a brother. Just a walking wallet. I looked down at the food in my hands. Slowly, I placed it on the welcome mat. Then, without a word, I took a picture. Of the food. Of their front door. I don't know why. Maybe to document the moment I realized. I was done. Then I turned around, got in my car, and drove away. They never even knew I was there. I drove aimlessly for hours. Ended up at an overlook outside of town. Sat on the hood of my car, staring at the valley below. Replaying their words in my head. The casual cruelty. The entitlement. The absolute certainty that I would keep paying for their lives. Like I had no choice. Like I owed them. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Hey honey, when can we expect this month's money? Your dad and I are thinking about that Alaska cruise. Also, Amy needs rent for her new place. I laughed out loud. The sheer audacity. At that moment, something inside me shifted. I pulled over at a rest stop. Opened my banking app. Looked at the shared family account I had been funneling money into for years. $112,000. I transferred every cent to my personal account. Then, I closed the shared account permanently. Next, I blocked their numbers, removed them from my social media, set up email filters to auto-delete anything from them. Then I went through my credit cards, found subscriptions I had been paying for, their phone bills, Netflix, Spotify, canceled everything, called the insurance companies, removed myself from their policies. One by one, I severed every financial tie. The moment I cut them off, I expected the calls to start, the guilt trips, the screaming, that how could you do this to your family? But at first, silence. And that scared me more than anything. For the first time in 9 years, my phone wasn't buzzing with demands. No texts from my mother asking for money. No voicemails from my dad ranting about the real world. No whining from Amy about some new crisis she expected me to fix. Just nothing. It was almost eerie, like the calm before a storm, and I knew this wasn't over. A week passed. Then, one night, around 2 a.m., my phone lit up. A single email. From my mother. The subject? What did you do? I took a deep breath, clicked it open, and let the fireworks begin. Jake, I don't know what's gotten into you, but I checked the family account today, and there's nothing left. I tried to pay the mortgage, and it bounced. Do you have any idea what you've done? Your father is furious. Amy is devastated. How could you be so selfish? We are your family. I raised you to be better than this. There it was. The shame. The manipulation. The same script they had always used to keep me in line. But this time, it didn't work. Another email came in. Then another. Then another. Each one more desperate than the last. I don't understand, sweetheart. What happened? We love you. We need you to fix this. The bank is threatening to take the house. Please, Jake. You can't do this to us. I could practically hear her fake sweetness through the screen, trying to pull me back in. But I didn't respond, because I knew the moment she realized guilt wasn't going to work, she'd switch to something worse. And I was right. 2 days later, a new email popped up. This time from Amy. You ruined my life. No greeting. No fake politeness. Just pure venom. I got evicted today, you heartless piece of SHD. I had to borrow money from friends just to book a motel. A Fing motel. How could you do this to me? I hope you rot. I stared at the screen, completely numb. Not because of her words, but because of how predictable they were. Amy had never once taken responsibility for her life. And now that she finally had to, she blamed me. The emails kept coming. From my mother. From Amy. Even from my dad, who barely used technology. I always knew you were ungrateful. But turning your back on your family? That's a new low. I ignored every single one. Because I finally understood. I wasn't their son. I wasn't their brother. I was just a paycheck. And now that the money was gone, so was their love. But then, on the 10th day of silence, I got a knock on my door. I checked the peephole, and my stomach dropped. It was my father, and he did not look happy. I stared through the peephole, heart pounding. My father stood on the other side of the door, arms crossed, jaw tight. His expression wasn't just angry, it was furious. Like he had marched over here just to make a point. And I already knew what that point was. I considered ignoring him, pretending I wasn't home. But I knew my dad. He wouldn't leave until he got what he wanted. So, with a deep breath, I unlocked the door and pulled it open. Took you long enough, he grunted, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I barely had time to process it before he was in my living room, pacing like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what you've done? He barked. I folded my arms. Yeah, I stopped being your ATM. That set him off. ATM, he spat. We're your family, Jake. Everything we ever did for you. This is how you repay us. I let out a sharp laugh. Everything you did for me? You mean belittling my job? Taking my money without even saying thank you? Mocking me behind my back? My father's face darkened. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. Until I turned 18, I shot back. After that, I was on my own. Except for when you needed money. He waved his hand dismissively. That's what family does, Jake. We help each other. I took a step closer. No, Dad. I helped you. But when have you ever helped me? Silence. For the first time, he hesitated. Like the thought had never even crossed his mind. Then, just as quickly, his face twisted back into a scowl. You're being selfish, he snapped. Your mother is in tears. Your sister is homeless. And you're sitting here, acting like the victim? My blood boiled. You want to talk about Amy? The woman who has spent her entire life using people? The woman who had 9 years to get her act together, but didn't because she knew I would always bail her out. She's your sister. She's an adult. Dad shook his head, his lip curling in disgust. I always knew you'd turn your back on us one day. He let the words hang there, expecting me to crumble, to feel guilty. But instead, I felt relief. Because now I knew. There was nothing left to salvage here. They had never loved me. Not the real me. Just the version of me that kept their bank accounts full. Get out, I said, voice cold. Dad's eyes snapped to mine. Excuse me. You heard me. I pointed to the door. You came here to make me feel bad? Didn't work. You want me to apologize? Not gonna happen. Now get out of my house. His nostrils flared. For a second, I thought he might swing at me. Instead, he let out a bitter laugh. Fine, he muttered. Don't come crawling back when you realize what you've done. And with that, he stormed out. Slammed the door so hard the walls shook. And just like that, he was gone. I stood there, breathing heavily, staring at the closed door, waiting for the guilt to creep in, for the regret to settle in my stomach. But it never came. For the first time in years, I had stood up for myself. And I wasn't sorry. Not even a little. That night, I slept better than I had in a decade. Until my mother decided to take things to the next level. And this time, she wasn't just after my money. She wanted revenge. I should have known my father wouldn't be the last. That the moment he left, furious and humiliated, my mother would be next. But even I didn't expect how far she would go. Because this time, she wasn't just after my money. She wanted to destroy me. It started with the Facebook post. A long, emotional rant from her page, dripping with fake sadness. I never thought I'd see the day when my son would betray his family. After everything we've done for him, he abandoned us in our time of need. We are on the verge of losing our home, and my poor daughter is living out of her car. I raised this boy with love and kindness, and this is how he repays us. If you ever think money will make you happy, look at my son. He has everything, but no heart. And at the bottom, a GoFundMe link, titled, Help a Struggling Family Survive Betrayal. I stared at the screen, my stomach churning. I had cut them off barely 2 weeks ago, and already, she had turned me into some kind of villain. The comments were flooded with support. Oh my God, I can't believe Jake would do this to you. After all the sacrifices you made for him? That's disgusting. I always knew money would change him. Money didn't change me. It changed them. But try explaining that to a bunch of Facebook Andes who only knew my mother's version of the story. The worst part? It worked. Within 24 hours, the GoFundMe had over $6,000. People from my hometown, extended family members, and even old teachers were donating. All because they believed my mother's sob story. I was furious. But more than that, I was done being quiet. I took a deep breath, opened my laptop, and wrote my post. Not an emotional rant. Not a plea for sympathy. Just the truth. I wasn't going to say anything, but since my mother decided to drag my name through the mud, here we go. For the past 9 years, I have financially supported my entire family. I paid their mortgage, their bills, my sister's endless bad decisions. In return, I was mocked behind my back, treated like an ATM. The moment I stopped paying, they turned on me. Now, my mother is running a GoFundMe claiming I abandoned them. She left out the part where they used me for almost a decade. If you donated, I suggest you ask where your money is going. Hint, not to survive betrayal. More like a vacation fund. And then, I posted screenshots, texts, emails, voicemails, proof that I had been funding their entire lives for nearly a decade. Screenshots of Amy bragging about spending my money on luxury bags. Emails from my mom pressuring me to pay for an Alaskan cruise. Even the cruel texts where they mocked me before they realized I had cut them off. Then, at the bottom, I wrote one last line. The bank account is closed. The free ride is over. Don't bother contacting me again. Then, I hit post. And I walked away. At first, I thought I had made a mistake. That nobody would believe me. That my mother's crocodile tears would win. But within an hour, everything exploded. People started commenting under her GoFundMe. Wait, so this isn't the full story? Why didn't you mention that Jake paid for everything for 9 years? Are you seriously lying to get money from strangers? The donations stopped instantly. By the end of the day, the GoFundMe was shut down. And my mother? She was losing her mind. I got a new email that night. The subject line? How dare you? I didn't even have to open it. I already knew what it said, because for the first time in her life, my mother had been exposed, and she couldn't handle it. But even with all of that, I still thought it was over. I was wrong, because Amy wasn't finished yet, and she was about to go nuclear. If I thought my mother's public meltdown was the worst of it, I was wrong, because Amy wasn't finished yet, and she was about to go nuclear. The day after the GoFundMe disaster, I woke up to 50 missed calls. Not from my mom, not from my dad, from my boss. That sent a chill down my spine. My boss never called me. Emails? Sure. Slack messages? Daily. But calling me 50 times in a row? Something was wrong, and I had a very bad feeling about who was behind it. I called him back, heart pounding. Jake, he said, his voice clipped. We have a problem. I swallowed hard. What kind of problem? A woman named Amy has been calling HR nonstop. She says you're a criminal. I froze. Amy had always been vindictive. But this was next-level insanity. She sent an email to the entire executive team, my boss continued. Claimed you stole thousands of dollars from your family. Said you used illegal tactics to funnel money away from them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? Dead serious. He sighed. Listen, I told them it sounded like a personal vendetta. But corporate takes accusations like this seriously. You need to get ahead of this now. I could barely think. Barely breathe. Amy was trying to ruin my career. And if I didn't handle this right, she just might succeed. I opened my work email and found her message. It was long, messy, barely coherent. But the main accusations were clear. I embezzled money from my parents. I financially abused my family for years. I was a dangerous manipulator who used money to control people. At the end, she wrote, if your company has any integrity, you will fire him immediately. He is a con artist, and I will not stop until justice is served. Unbelievable. She wasn't just trying to humiliate me. She was trying to take away everything I had built. I took a deep breath. Then, I fought back. I forwarded every single bank statement, text, and email proving that I had been supporting my family for years. I included screenshots of Amy begging for money. Mom is demanding I pay for their vacations. Dad is calling me an ATM. And at the very end, I attached the Facebook post where my mother admitted they were using me. I sent the email to HR, my boss, and the executive team. Then, I called my boss again. Check your inbox, I said. I heard a click. The sound of him opening my email. A long silence followed. Then, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I muttered. That's the truth. My boss exhaled sharply. This is insane. So, am I fired? Fired, he scoffed. Hell no. But we're lawyering up. Your sister just crossed a line. I blinked. What? We're filing harassment charges, Jake? She contacted our executives with false accusations. That's defamation. My breath caught in my throat. Wait, you're suing Amy? No, he said firmly. You are. And we're backing you. I had never felt more relieved in my life. My company believed me. Amy's plan backfired spectacularly. And now? She was about to face real consequences for the first time ever. A few hours later, Amy's number popped up on my phone. I let it ring. Then another call. Then another. Finally, a text. You sick F. You're suing me. I smiled. Then typed back. You wanted to ruin my life. Now you're finally facing the consequences. Have fun. Blocked. Amy had always been the type to run from consequences. She made excuses, played the victim, and cried her way out of everything. But this time, she couldn't escape. Because she wasn't just fighting me. She was fighting my entire company's legal team. Within days, she received a cease and desist letter. It was simple, direct, and terrifyingly serious. Your accusations against our employee have been documented as false and defamatory. If you continue to harass our organization, we will proceed with legal action. Amy freaked out. I heard from a mutual friend that she was crying to anyone who would listen. I was just trying to warn them. I didn't mean to get sued. Jake is being so cruel. He's destroying my life. No, Amy. You did that all by yourself. Then my mother called. Of course, she did. Jake, you're taking this too far, she snapped. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Was trying to get me fired a misunderstanding? I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. You know what's funny, Mom? When Amy tried to ruin my life, you didn't call her. But now that she's facing consequences, suddenly you care. Silence. Then, in a much softer tone. Sweetheart, she's your sister. Not anymore. I said. Then I hung up, and I never answered her calls again. Amy backed off after that. The legal threats scared her into silence. The GoFundMe was gone. The harassment stopped. And my family, they finally realized they had lost. Because without my money, they had nothing. Months passed. For the first time in a decade, I was living for myself. No guilt. No phone calls demanding money. No family drama is dragging me down. Just freedom. And it was glorious. Then one day, I got a letter in the mail. From my parents. I almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity got the best of me. Inside was a single page. A message from my mother. We don't know what to say to fix this. We miss you. Please come home. For a moment, I felt something. But then I thought about everything they had done. The years of using me. The mocking, the betrayal, the lies. And suddenly, I felt nothing. I tore up the letter. Tossed it in the trash. And just like that, I was done. For good. Cutting them off wasn't just about money. It was about peace. For years, I had carried the weight of their expectations, their guilt trips, and their constant demands. And now, no more late-night calls begging for rent money. No more passive-aggressive emails about how family supports each other. No more being the scapegoat for their failures. It was over, and I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. Without the financial drain, I had more money than I knew what to do with. So I invested. I traveled. I bought a house on the coast, a dream I had put on hold for years while funding other people's lives. I finally had a life of my own, and it was better than I ever imagined. Now and then, I'd hear bits and pieces about my family. My mother's GoFundMe scheme had ruined her reputation in town. People who once donated realized they had been lied to. Amy, still jumping from job to job, never lasting more than a few months. And my dad, forced to work well past retirement age because the lazy button pusher stopped paying his mortgage. I should have felt bad, but I didn't. Because for 9 years, I had done everything for them. And they spit in my face. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. One day, I got one last email from my mother. It was short. Simple. I hope you're happy. And you know what? I was. I deleted it. Blocked her for good. And never looked back. Some people say, but they're your family. Like that, word should excuse everything. It should erase years of manipulation and abuse. But the truth is, family isn't just blood. Family is who loves you, who respects you, who stands by you even when you have nothing to offer. And by that definition, I never had a family to begin with. And I was better off without them. So, to anyone reading this, if you're stuck in a cycle of guilt and obligation, wondering if you'll ever be free, let me tell you something. You don't owe them your life. You don't owe them your happiness. You don't owe them anything. The moment you realize that, that's the moment you take your life back. Just like I did. And trust me, it's worth it.